All right. So when we look at the student population and the Drive to 55, as we know, the highly integrated environment in which we operate in, and when I say we, I'm saying TCAT faculty, as well as on your instructional support side of the house, we are with our students 30 hours a week, at least. That's at the least. And so we provide a lot of services outside of, teaching them or mastery of any of these competencies and demonstration. And so just getting familiar with what that classroom now looks like as a result of Drive to 55 and what that student population. So Drive to 55 was launched in, of course, 2015 is when we had our Tennessee Promise, but in 2013 at the State of the State address given by Governor Haslam, that's when he made the announcement that we would be moving toward this Drive to 55 initiative, which at that time, about 32% of Tennesseans had a higher education academic credential, whether that was a certificate or diploma from one of our institutions or a degree. And the goal, of course, is to reach our 52% by 2025, no, 55%. I'm switching numbers, 55% by 2025. So at that point, we were at 32%. You check today we're around 42%, so we're making our way there. I've got a slide to share with you to see kind of our trajectory and how we're moving forward. So the question we ask is, why is it important? Why is Drive to 55 important to our governor? Why is it important to the state of Tennessee? The reason why it's important, and doesn't look like you can see very well on this slide, is because $9.33 billion will be filtered back into the state of Tennessee's economy, which then filters back out to providing services and support to our Tennesseans, filtering back into your classrooms to make sure that you've got the equipment that you need, that you have the things that you need in order to be more effective, and the ability for us to serve more students, because now we can start offering more day classes, more night classes, and can do a little more, bring on more personnel to make that happen. So that $9.33 billion, that wasn't a number that someone just kind of pulled out of the sky. The research team at the University of Knoxville and the Haslam College of Business Research Division, they ran these figures as the initiative was kind of at the ground level and starting to look at the financial impact on the state of Tennessee. So when we talk about the Drive to 55, more academic credentials, the first population of student that was looked at was our traditional age student. That's our student coming directly out of high school, coming into a post-secondary opportunity. And so we had to look at, where do we stand now with the college going rate? So if you look at the college going rate across the 95 counties here in the state of Tennessee, only 15 of our 95 counties are above the 66% national average. If you look to the far right, that tallest green line, can anyone guess where that tallest green line may be coming from? The highest college going rate in the state of Tennessee would be what county? Williamson County. Williamson County, and it's no surprise that that's where the highest per capita income resides. And so Williamson County is the tallest, but then the next three tallest, can anyone guess even a region that the other three highest going rates would be in? East? You would think middle. I would think middle. I live in middle. Everyone I know is going to college in some way, but actually it's in West Tennessee. The three counties are Decatur, Henderson, and the other one's not coming to me. But the reason why that that third county, those three counties, we've got Decatur, Henderson, and Perry County, is because the Jim and Janet Ayers Foundation in that area started a version of Tennessee Promise prior to Tennessee Promise kicking off. So they invest big dollars out there in the West Tennessee region to make sure that every high school graduate is going to college and providing them with additional support outside of kind of that last dollar that Tennessee Promise would award. So we've got some work to do, but at least we know where we're getting started at, and I hope when we present this in the next couple of years, that college going rate, we're going to have a lot more above that 66%. So the question is, how do we solve the problem? How do we solve the problem of getting all 95 counties beyond that 66%? Well, that's where we have, as I've mentioned, Governor Haslam in 2014 now announcing the Tennessee Promise and what that meant for us. All high school graduates will now receive financial assistance in order to come into our classrooms, to come into the community colleges completely free. So our first class actually started in 2015 for Tennessee Promise. And when we look at the framework of the Tennessee Promise model, it first begins with mentorship. How many of us serve as a Tennessee Achieves mentor or have served in the past as a Tennessee Achieves mentor? Okay, so let's talk about that mentorship piece just a moment. For the past 4 years, I've served as a Tennessee Achieves mentor, and the way the process works, I've chosen a high school that I would like to work with. My high school is Stewart's Creek High School. And in January, I receive anywhere from 7 to 10 high school students that are assigned to me. I'm given those students demographic information, where they go to high school. Of course, it's going to be Stewart's Creek. Their top 3 choices for colleges. And so we work with them on that level. I go through the training every year before being handed those students' names. From that kickoff meeting that may happen in January or February, that's kind of an introduction. We then move to making sure that the student is meeting there's other meetings that take place, making sure the FAFSA has been completed, making sure they've applied to the college that they plan to go to. So it's a checklist of things that I'm doing as the mentor, but I'm basically making sure that those 7 to 10 students are staying on track to remain eligible. Over the past 4 years, the hardest piece to get through to our students, to our recent high school graduates, are these 8 hours of community service. You would not think 8 hours would be you have months to get it done. It is so hard to get the students in to do community service hours. When I was at Murfreesboro and was a Tennessee Achieves mentor, there were some summer kind of camps where we would have children coming in, and I basically had to go and pick up a couple of the high school students and say, you're going to work this camp, because if you don't work this camp and get you some volunteer hours, then you become ineligible for Tennessee Promise. So it's kind of that hand-holding sort of deal in that mentorship. And I know that each of you are with students 30 hours out of the week, and so to pick up additional students to mentor through this, it may be asking a lot, but I challenge you, and you can ask Tennessee Achieves to only assign you 2 or 3 students, but it gets you familiar with the process and what a high school student is going through to get to us. One of the other unique features for the TCAT Tennessee Promise student is that they can actually start in the summer. That's not the case at the community colleges. They kick off in the fall. And so if that student tells me they want to go to a TCAT, they want to get started in May, then those community service hours must be done by the end of April. And that last weekend in April is typically when they get it done. And that's just the nature of the beast. But I have enjoyed my experience with them. Emails are only effective with the parents of those Promise students, and I don't always get all the parents' information, but text message seems to be most common. Text them, hey, check your email. That's what it always starts with, check your email, and then I'll give them kind of a summary of what's stated in the email. And then of course we've got the financial aid piece where that last dollar is being paid by the Tennessee Promise grant, and then all of this together just sets up a framework for success. So when we look across the last several years with FAFSA filings, how many of us have had to file a FAFSA application? Oh, the fun of completing FAFSA. So the great part about the mentor piece is I do not have to assist with FAFSA. Sometimes I assist with correcting FAFSA, but that initial work is done at the high school with the counselors, with those at the high school to kind of walk them through it. But if you've ever had to complete a FAFSA application the first time, you know you are handing over your entire life in order to get all the information in. And it's a long process initially, but every year after that it's a simple update. But what you see here is, as a result of Tennessee Promise, the state of Tennessee's rate of filings have gone up drastically. In 2014, prior to Drive to 55, we were at 60.4% completion. Now we're up to 73.5%, and I'm sure that has grown even in 2018 when we get those numbers finalized. So when you look across the state, the states, the United States, the state of Tennessee is changing the narrative. We're changing the narrative. New York Times says free tuition, Tennessee could tutor New York. When that headline hit, I'm sure that was that created a little ruffles for those folks in New York, because of course they know it all. They've got MIT out there. They know how to make this work. And then we've been on CNN. A lot of coverage. So often folks from the TBR central office and at our institutions are called to present in other states to talk about what we're doing with Drive to 55, reconnect with Promise, and those sorts of things. So we're on that national platform, and the model that we have going here, folks want to mimic it. They want to figure out how we did it without a state income tax, sort of thing. Say that one more time. It is lottery money. It is lottery money.
We were supposed to follow their thing from the get-go.
And
It took a long time to get on that same page as Georgia.
Yes, Georgia's didn't pan out exactly the way they anticipated it panning out initially. They've gotten some things worked out. So Dr. Schulte, I think he may have mentioned there's some other states that now say, well, Tennessee is shooting for 55%, we're going to shoot for 60%. You've got other states that are doing this, but in terms of kicking off that model and doing it the right way, in terms of Tennessee has been put up there as the national platform. So when we look at our 2015 cohort of Tennessee Promise, we had about 13,287 students that were eligible, because you can lose, a student can lose eligibility if they hadn't completed the FAFSA, if they're not attending their meetings, if they do not get volunteer hours done. So these are the students that actually entered one of our TCATs or community colleges in 2015. 58.3% is their success rates. Once they went through, we've got 2016 cohort numbers as well. You can see the growth in the number of students that were eligible, as well as the success rate, but we're still looking to grow that, because when we talk about success rates for TCATs, we want to see a number closer to 80%. And so we don't have those numbers pulled out for TCAT versus community college, but we do want to continue to see that number grow with the students that are eligible and the success rate there. So I spoke about a little earlier, our goal, TBR institutions, part of the Drive to 55 goal is 25,492. This is where we stand per year. And in 2017, we have a goal of awarding 21,061 academic credentials. We actually awarded 21,855. So we are ahead of what the goal is, and more than confident that we will reach our goal by 2025 and exceed it. if we continue on the trajectory that we're currently on. So I was going to do a poll, and you were going to be using smartphones and all that good stuff, but we are going to do it the old-fashioned classroom way. We're just going to get you to participate and just share some information with us. So the question up here is, what assumption can be made about a Tennessee Promise student or recent high school graduate and their learning expectations? And what I want to, the reason why I'm bringing that about is because, again, we're talking about the student population that's now in your classroom. The average age, traditionally, the average age at a TCAT ranges anywhere from 26 years old to about 40 years old. The overall average is about 32. Now we're seeing a different population as a result of Tennessee Promise. They're coming in droves, and so we are having to adjust how we are interacting with our students, how we are teaching our students, how we, it's a diverse learning environment now. The adult population may not be the largest population in your classroom. So what can you say for those that have been in the classroom and those that are working with Tennessee Promise or recent high school graduates? What would you say about them and their learning expectations? What motivates them? What are some things that you're seeing that, are maybe causing you some pause and causing you to have to back up and say, I'm going to have to repunt this to make sure that we're on the same page and that everyone is getting what they came here to get? Anyone?
My experience so far is they want to learn.
They want to learn.
They want to learn. They want to get the best knowledge that they can, the information out there, so when they are done with their education, when they go out into the workforce, they're confident.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I think.
They want to learn. Good. Anyone else want to share? We've got some that have been in the classroom a year or more. You've got Tennessee Promise students. Jennifer, I don't want to call on you.
I just was thinking of one area that I was working with this summer, and I'm comparing in my head a brand new this summer student and one that's getting ready to finish.
Uh-huh.
My brand new one, I come from the high school world,
Mm-hmm.
so I know these high school students, and I know their work ethic, and it's not always where, as an adult, and you have life experiences, you think that work ethic ought to be. And that's where his was, and I had to be really tough and mean, and I call him, I'm like, your mama, I'm gonna treat you like I do my own children, and I'm gonna have high expectations of you. But then I had another one who, and he did well, he finished the program in Tech Foundations, but then I had my other student who's getting ready to graduate, and he came to me and he said, can you work with me on just some vocabulary and some basic things so that when I get out, I look smart?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, yes. And so we kind of went over some things
Mm-hmm.
with him in that respect. So I think as they go through the program, they realize I'm getting ready to get out of the school world. I want to present myself as an intelligent human being.
Mm-hmm.
And even though he was very smart, there were just some things that he felt
That he needed
about,
to be.
and I wanted to give him that security. So I'm like her. I think that they want to learn, and when they get out, they want to present their best self.
Good, good.
I also come from the high school world, transitioning to TCAT, and they're already used to technology-based learning.
Right.
At the high school, I was using Google Classroom and pushing things to them
Mhm.
through those type of platforms. So they're already adjusted to that, and I think that's something that may be a challenge.
For some of our, So technology-based learning, we've got a lot of resources out there that would support you in incorporating more technology. So tapping into that, and we'll talk about a portal that will house some of that. So keep in mind those assumptions, and I know that some of you all have some and you hadn't shared, but that's okay too. Just keep those in mind as we go through this presentation. So let's talk about the next stop, the next initiative that falls under that Drive to 55 umbrella, and that is the Tennessee Reconnect. And that Reconnect program is, of course, focusing on the adult. For the TCAT's Reconnect rolled out in 2015. for the community colleges, it's just rolling out this fall. So the Reconnect program is for that adult that's 25 or older, or has been declared independent on their FAFSA. Let's say, you know, they're not living with parents, they're not dependent on anyone, they're taking care of themselves. And so by the fall, all 40 TBR institutions will have Reconnect. And so this slide just kind of talks about what Reconnect is. Again, that last dollar after a student has been awarded Pell, Walter NAFI, what is that last dollar amount that can be applied in use of the Reconnect funds? So let's talk about the population of student that you're most familiar with, because you yourself, you may be in school and you may be an adult learner. What are the characteristics, which of these are characteristics of an adult learner for you? So I've got 5 listed here: readiness to learn, motivation to learn is internal, use of life skills as a resource for learning, self-directed learner, or immediacy of application. Which of these characteristics? All of them? You would agree all? Everyone agree? All of these are characteristics of an adult learner?
My adult learner, they want to be there. With my just getting out of high school, they think they deserve to be there.
Gotcha.
So it's,
Gotcha.
there's a total.
It's a privilege for the adult learner. I'm here, I'm thankful to have this opportunity. So, but did that come as a result of Reconnect, or did that come as a result of this is an adult learner and that's just where you know, life, maturity?
They get the workforce and they're like, oh crap, I don't want to be here.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be a little bit higher than just sweeping the floor. I want to learn a little bit.
So do you think that because we have students that was another poll, since we have students that are at different points in our program that fall into these different populations, how many of you all are making use of peer-to-peer instruction? For instance, you've got a 3rd trimester student that you may team up with a 1st trimester student. That is that Tennessee Promise student maybe in their 1st trimester, that adult kind of guiding them, helping, kind of mentoring them along. Would you say that may be an effective practice? Because as an instructor, you are asked to be in a lot of different places at a lot of different times, meeting the needs of those students, all depending on where they are in your program. So thinking about some strategies, you know, the peer-to-peer, just different strategies that can be used in the classroom to accommodate these different student populations, as well as if there were assumptions that you came up with for the Tennessee Promise and recent high school graduates. I do challenge you that don't let those assumptions hinder your work or see the true abilities of the student. Because sometimes we'll say, oh, now we got to deal with these kids. I don't want to deal. They're not serious about what they want to do, and you become frustrated. And so you focus your attention on those adult students that are in there doing what they need to do. And you know, truth of the matter is, those that are struggling and those that don't want to be there, that means that we just may have to do a little more work to get them engaged and get them involved, and again, doing some of that peer-to-peer type of engagement and interactions for them. This is a list of the 5 assumptions. If you want to, these PowerPoints are going to go inside a portal that you will have access to. But Malcolm Knowles did this work back in 1980 is when he did a lot of this work, and really gave a detailed breakdown on the adult learner and kind of what to expect of that adult learner. And all, as you all stated, all 5 of these are characteristic of an adult learner. So I just told you about the comparison, and we just kind of talked through that. So let's talk about another population of student, and that is going to be our high school student that's currently in high school, and they're either being bused to your campus in your program, or you're working with an adjunct teacher at the high school to teach your curriculum, but either way, they're considered your dual enrollment student, right? So we've got EPSO. Who knows what an EPSO? High school, coming from high school, tell us what an EPSO is.
There's a new requirement that they're gonna have so many EPSOs to graduate high school, whether it be dual enrollment, dual credit, ACT scores, another one.
Correct.
So
Uh-huh.
could really change the way the high schools have to do. It's going to have to
It's,
change. Yeah,
it
gotcha.
it changes the way that the ball game works for what we will talk about on the next slide is a ready graduate indicator is what those are. So EPSO stands for early post-secondary opportunities, and for the TCATs, you see we've got a lot of different options offered for EPSOs, but the popular three for TCATs are going to be your dual enrollment, dual credit, and industry certification. So let's just talk about, I spoke about dual enrollment, either they're being bused to you or the high school teachers teaching your curriculum and the student is earning credit at both the high school and at the TCAT for that guided pathway into your post-secondary program once they graduate high school. The dual credit is really a new topic for the TCATs. Around about last year is when dual credit started becoming popular for TCATs. We have a few that are delving into this area. I think Chevyville, we've got some local dual credit that's starting this fall. And basically what that does, the high school student doesn't come to your high school. You don't have to go over to the high school, but what you do is you work with that high school teacher in order to make sure you all on the same page with the curriculum, because the student is taking an assessment that has been developed by you, has been vetted by you, and you can choose whether you facilitate that that final assessment. A student passes that final assessment, whether that's a combination of written and demonstration. They pass it, and once they are admitted into the TCAT after graduation, that's when those hours are then articulated toward the completion of their program. Any questions about dual credit and the difference between dual credit and dual enrollment? Okay, and then we have industry certification. So this has been one of the hottest topics here in the last few weeks for me. I've been working very closely with the Tennessee Department of Education, and what they've done is they provided a list of promoted industry certifications that they are now going to fund for high school students to take. Give you an example, OSHA 10. OSHA 10 is a industry certification that is common across most of what we consider to be our high ceiling programs. And if a high school student comes in with that OSHA 10, what the DOE has asked us to do is place a value on it. What value or how many clock hours would a high school student be awarded coming in with that industry certification, and for which courses would those hours be credited toward? So OSHA 10, I had to work with the presidents and vice presidents across the state to really give responses back to each one of these industry certifications, which were about 150 or so that we were looking at. OSHA 10 is going to be 10 hours awarded toward safety and orientation for maybe a machine tool course or industrial maintenance course, welding technology or something like that. And I just pulled that one out of my head, and the list goes on and on and on. But that is going to be something that we're now seeing high school students come in with some of those industry certifications. Computer information technology. The students may come in with A+, a Network Plus into our college. What type of value have we placed on that? So the DOE is wanting to they will publish this list of industry certifications to their high schools and LEAs to say, this is what TCATs are willing to award our students. And so they're working to, the chamber will fund some of those industry certifications for the students to set for them. So it's a major deal, but these are the three most common EPSOs that we are seeing at our TCATs. And so early post-secondary opportunities allow students to earn credit, which I spoke about, become familiar with post-secondary learning expectations and requirements, develop confidence and study skills necessary for success in our colleges, make more informed decisions about their plans and career goals, and decrease the time and cost of completing a degree or certificate. Because with dual enrollment, which is where the student comes to us, there is a dual enrollment grant that the students can use where they get so many courses for free. And so EPSOs were birthed out of the Every Student Succeeds Act, ESSA, of 2015, and that's what goes back to the Ready Graduate Indicator. So either they've got a 21 or higher on the ACT by the time they graduate, they've completed 4 EPSOs, they've completed 2 EPSOs and earned an industry certification on a CTE path, they've completed 2 EPSOs and a designated score on the ASVAB. So those are the indicators to determine whether a student is ready to graduate. That's why you have more high schools knocking on your door saying, hey, we need to partner. We need to do these dual enrollment things. So going back to talking about, again, that student population that's now in your classroom and understanding that we are going to be reaching them, trying to reach them in different ways. Again, this is another challenge. I challenge you to do formative assessments with your students. Ask these 3 questions just as a check-in every so often. Those questions are, what am I doing in this class that helps you learn? What am I doing in the class that does not help you learn? And what may I do differently to improve your ability to learn? Typically, you're going to ask these questions of a student that you're probably counseling in some way. Maybe they're not making the cut, especially when it comes to our practical nursing programs, because you have a certain grade that must be met in each course before a student can progress. So just doing these checks and balances will help you better work with, engage with the students, and help them on their path to success. Would you agree? Okay. So that is going to conclude the student population and the drive to 55. We'll go ahead and hop next into the next presentation. I'll get it pulled up here, and that is going to be our Council on Occupational Education, COE for faculty. How many of you all are familiar with COE? Heard COE? How many have been on your institution when a COE visit has taken place? Tell me about your experience.
We killed many trees
What year?
6 years ago.
Okay. No longer killing trees. Everything's electronic. But I know exactly what I've been there.
Thorough, it's very thorough.
Very thorough, yes. What was your role as a faculty member in that accreditation visit?
Just trying to think what it's all called. Making sure our crates.
Yeah, I had to compile all the data and
Yeah.
forms they needed and present it in a fashion, when they come to a particular
Uh-huh,
program.
for your program.
and have proof of everything we've done and offered for the students.
Proof, not the promise, is what COE says. It's the proof, not the promise. Remember that. We had someone else in the back raise their hand that they've been through a visit. What was your role?
Just had to get everything together and follow records.
We're on satellite location, so we had that initial setup.
Okay. Okay. Well, the good part about it is, yeah, we don't have to do crates anymore. We're not killing trees anymore. It's all electronic, but the proof, not the promise, that's what it boils down to. If you say that student has been placed at X company, well, let me verify that and make sure that John Doe is really over at that company working. So make sure if you say it, if you put it in a report to COE, better believe that it is fair game for COE to follow up and make sure that's accurate. So we're going to talk about COE, but as we get into that conversation, I'm going to pull up a slide and y'all just let me know which characters as you prepare for September the 4th. first day of the fall trimester. Which one is you today, and which one will be you on the 4th? I guess that's what I should ask. Who's got this? Who feels like I've got this? I've got this. And who's a little stressed? You know? A little stressed, and some may be a combination of both. It all depends on, when or what we're talking about at the moment. You know, if you get an email on Friday afternoon that may say, hey, we've made some changes, or you're going to have this more additional students is going to be coming in on, you get those types of correspondence, before the weekend starts, and then you got a holiday on Monday. So now I can't enjoy my last cookout of the year because I've got to be focused on what's going to happen on Tuesday, right? So let's talk about COE. What is COE about? It's about assuring quality and integrity in career and technical education. Some of its the goals are to provide quality instruction, which I know that's what we are focused on and what we're doing. Continual improvement, high ethical and educational standards, enhanced public understanding. How often do you hear from people that live in your city or in your county, and they know that a TCAT is there, but they're like, I'm just not sure what goes on in that building. What happens over there? Too often, that's said. And so as a part of what we're doing with COE and making sure we stay in compliance, we want to inform the public as to what we're doing and how we're doing it. And then finally, the accreditation process validates the achievement of learning and program objectives, and we're going to go into that. COE is recognized and endorsed by the U.S. Department of Education. It was created in 1971 as a part of the Southern Accreditation of Colleges and Schools, and in 1995 is when it broke out and became its own independent accreditor. What this tells us right here, anytime an accreditor is recognized and endorsed by the U.S. Department of Education, basically what that means is we can award financial aid. When a school loses accreditation, it can no longer award federal financial aid, which is a major deal, right? It's more than that, but when you drill down to it, that's basically what it is. So as we talk about COE and the role of COE on your campuses, you have an accreditation liaison on your campus. That's going to be your person on your campus that is all knowing about COE. They typically submit your annual reports. They're on your back about your reporting of hours, student hours, where we're not going a week or 2 weeks before we post student hours. We have no one in here that does that, right? Banner's going to alert you when you go too long. And so, with the placement data, these are the folks that's going to come in and say, okay, we've had these students to complete, keep track of them so we know where they're placed, and even with licensure. Who's passed? So you're probably checking the State Board of Nursing website to see who's passed licensure, or for cosmetology programs, checking that State Board website. Who in here does not know who their accreditation liaison? So when you get back to your campus, I urge you to find who that person is. They're going to find you. But be proactive. Say, in my new faculty institute, I was told to come and find you because you have all COE answers. They're going to find you. Trust me. Again, they handle all matters related to accreditation. That's typically going to be someone in a role that is an I dotter and a T crosser, because that's what it requires to make sure you're getting everything in. So an accreditation visit, which that was a question I asked a little earlier, typically these visits happen every 6 years. And the purpose of the visit, again, is to assure that the institution is in compliance with the policy, rules, standards, and conditions of the commission. The visits can last anywhere from 3 to 4 days, all dependent on how many programs and how many off-site locations you have. The team is made up of individuals across the nation, not in Tennessee, because anyone in Tennessee would be a conflict of interest to a school in Tennessee. I could not serve on the team for any of your TCATs. And so we have to sign, when I've been assigned to a team, the first thing I have to do is complete a conflict of interest form to make sure that there's no conflicts in any way. And remember, do not be afraid of a COE accreditation visit. It's kind of squirrely on campuses as you're preparing for it, and once someone says, okay, I'm going to pick up the team member from the airport, then everyone's on edge. Be easy, be comfortable, because if you've been doing what you need to do to be in compliance, there's not going to be any problems. But it is a tool for future improvement and development, and again, all about quality and staying in compliance. A few years ago, the COE instituted this unannounced team visit. Has anyone had an unannounced team visit? No. None of our schools in Tennessee have yet to have an unannounced team visit, but I did want to let you know what the difference between the announced team visit is and the unannounced. So the announced, as I said, it typically is a cycle every 6 years. Once you've been reaffirmed, you know the year that the COE team will be back to review you for the next 6-year period. These unannounced visits are usually triggered by, it's either random, you're in the mid-cycle of receiving your last reaffirmation, maybe 2 or 3 years after you've received your last visit, or there is something that's at risk. You've had drastic inflation to enrollments or to FTE, or something is questionable about what has been submitted to COE. You've received excessive complaints that have gone up to the commission office. Those are the types of things that will get you on this unannounced visit. And I'll tell you the way it operates. So no one picks them up from the airport. They're either renting a car or they fly in themselves, and at 8 a.m. they walk in to your institution and ask for the president. They see the president, hello Mr. President, and I'm here for an unannounced visit with COE. President reads the letter, and the next thing is, I need a room. Place me in a room, and I need the following. And really they're going through all 10 of your standards and making sure you're in compliance. So you're getting a unannounced visitation, accreditation visitation, but if there's a focus area, for instance, if you've received excessive complaints, what they're going to ask is, let me see all of your student complaints and the way in which you've handled those or addressed those. Those should always be documented, from what the complaint was to how you resolved it, in student services, typically in some area in a folder, so that you can go pull that and have that ready for them to review. Don't want to scare you, just want to state the reality. So what that tells us is you can't wait to 5 years in to start preparing for your 6-year visit. You have to stay ready. So what I've seen as some of the best practices is I've traveled the country visiting different schools on different visits, teams. Every 3 to 4 months, checking in to make sure that let's just have some time to make sure that all of our documentation is where it needs to be, because at any point we can come and this information be pulled. For faculty, the standard that you're going to spend most of your time with is going to be standard 2. That's educational programs and program instruction, which you mentioned, and that's basically making sure that your standard 2 has complied with every piece of criteria for your program. And that's typically it's like a 2.5-page document. We have placed that check sheet for standard 2 inside the online faculty learning community, which we'll talk about later. But just so you see it, you become familiar with it, you know what it is, you know what's expected of you in your role as a faculty member. So now let's talk about the COE approved program list. COE maintains the program list based on what your accreditation liaison is uploading into the system. It's going to have the program list, it's going to have the different offerings, whether it's day, night, hybrid, online, along with the zip code. When COE comes for a visit, they are only focused on your approved program list. If you have anything outside of that program list that you're offering, finding, because you never notified COE. And COE is the go-between between us and the U.S. Department of Education. And if you're pulling down Title IV funds and offering a program that hadn't been approved by COE, then that's trouble. We want to also make sure that the exact wording of that program is accurate on any publication that you have out there, whether it's your website, whether it's a brochure, whether it's any communication that you're kind of sending out to the general public. If your program is welding technology, on every piece of that literature, there should be welding technology. If your program is industrial, electrical, maintenance, mechatronics, that complete name should be on everything that you're sending out and promoting for your program. Program names are so important, and making sure that they align with what COE has. Any questions about that? And so at the bottom of this slide is a list of what classifies a program as active if it currently has students, if it's had students enrolled in the last 12 months, if it's been approved by the commission within the last 180 days, and if it currently has or may have post-secondary students enrolled in a secondary program. Okay. Questions about your approved program list? These are all of the programmatic actions that require notification and approval to COE. Before it could go to COE from your institution, let's kind of talk about the flow of how it happens. You meet with business and industry. Your advisory committee member says, hey, I'd like to make some tweaks to your program, to your curriculum. I want to add a trimester. All of that is fine. But it's a process to make that change happen. So the process is making sure you engage your president, inform your president that this is something that's coming down the pike, and once you all have agreed on what you want to happen, there are documents and forms that must be submitted here to TBR. Those documents and forms come into me. I review them based on there's all depending on what it is. It's going to depend on the form that we would need. If it's a new program, we submit those to curriculum. If it's a program modification where, again, you're offering another option or changing 25% or more of that program, those sorts of things come through curriculum. If you want to revise your curriculum, let's say you want to, currently in your first trimester, you've got a course titled Ohm's Law, and you've got 50 hours of training currently for that course. But now that you've met with business and industry said you should be training those students for 150 clock hours. So now you want to make a change to that. That's a curriculum revision. Curriculum revisions go through a different form because now that we're on common curriculum, that change could affect other TCATs. And so we have to take it through the proper process to make sure that we're notifying and including them on that communication. So however it comes in, I review it, I vet it, check it against what all COE says we must do, and then it's then passed along to Dr. Schulte for his approval, and then it goes to the board. And our board meets 4 times a year. And we've got one coming up in September. And so the board reviews it, and once they approve it, communication is sent back out to your president. Your president can then move forward with notifying COE. COE will not take anything directly from the institution to them about any programmatic action because TBR is the governing board for each of your institutions. So adding a new program, changing an existing program in length by 25% or more, going from 1296 to 1728. Changing the mode of delivery of an existing program. We talk about that. Replicating an existing program. I'm going to now offer night IEM. I'm offering day, now I'm going to offer night. Relocating an existing program, taking a program from an off-site location, now bringing it onto the main campus, or vice versa. Deleting an existing program. Before you can delete, terminate, inactivate a program, you must have a teach-out plan for the students that are currently enrolled. And so you've got one of two options to do that. You teach them out with the current curriculum current program that you're planning to terminate, or you worked out something with the student, and typically your president or vice president will be involved in that process where the student is agreeing to come on to whatever that new program may be. But you must have a teach-out plan in place. And then changing of a SIP code. SIP codes are the classifying instructional program identifying code that comes down from the federal government, so that we can identify, this is the program name, but what industry are we training our students for? And that's basically what the SIP code is. There are numbers that are assigned to a program called SIP codes that help us to identify that, help us with reporting, help us with making informed decisions about where are we seeing our highest number of graduations, what are the high producing programs, and we typically run that based on SIP codes. Questions about notifications, approvals? So let's talk about the COE annual report. This particular report is submitted every December for your institution. That report encompasses your completion, placement, and licensure rates. Currently, those benchmarks reside at 60% completion, 70% placement, and 70% licensure. When your accreditation liaison comes into you, and sometimes your student services coordinator will come to you about this as well, they want to know how many students, starting September 4th, they're going to want to know how many are new students, how many are continuing students. That makes up your cumulative number of students in your program. At any point during this reporting period, so it would go from September the 4th until August, the end of August, when your summer term ends, they're going to want to know how many withdrew, how many were placed, where were they placed, did you award any sufficient credentials? Who knows what a sufficient credential is? What we call sufficient credentials is when a student is enrolled in your program, life happens, they need to stop out, and they have not earned that terminal diploma or that terminal certificate, but you have embedded exit points. That student, you exit them with an award. It's not the terminal award, but you awarded them something where they could still, they have sufficient credentials to get employed. That's considered a sufficient credential. So those are counted into your calculations as well. So all of that, it's a long spreadsheet. But don't worry, I posted it inside the faculty online learning community just so you can look at it. Not that you need to know it, but just so you can look at it and better understand what is expected of you as a faculty member. Is that fair enough? Okay. So again, I talked about Standard 2. That's for the faculty role. Your job-related health, safety, and fire prevention must be integrated in instruction. Most of your programs have safety, have some form of safety in them. For our high ceiling programs, when as a team member, when I walk in on an accreditation team visit, if I walk in and I see a student without goggles on, that's beyond a certain point in that shop, or if I do not see safety notifications posted around the room, that's something that is going to alarm me, and I'm going to ask you as the instructor, this is not a safe environment. What is the safety plan here at the institution? And if those two do not mesh, then we've got an issue, and we may have a finding there. Work-based activities. Work-based activities must be linked to the competencies that are to be achieved in your program. So it's not We're just sending students off to do some work-based activities, but it's not tied back to what we've got going on in class and what the competencies are. We want to make sure that your work-based activities, again, are linked back to your program objectives. Advisory committee meetings and minutes. For those that went through a visit, how many of you all were typing meeting minutes when you realized there were none? It happens. It happens quite often. We'll go into more depth about that. And then job placement verification, I spoke about that. That team member is going to have a list of 25 slots. And of those 25 slots, they're going to say, they're going to ask the president or whoever that accreditation liaison is when you're on that visit, take me to the student records room and I'm going to randomly pull 25 students records that have completed. I want to see completed records. And when I randomly pull them, I'm going to be in a room making phone calls to where students were placed. And all I want to know, the student doesn't have to be still employed, but all I want to know is, did John Doe ever work at your company? And so that's, do a random 25. If you've got too many discrepancies, it's a finding. So, Occupational Advisory Committee, who all knows, have met your advisory committees, working with your advisory committees, know how important your advisory committees are, yes. So this is some of the criteria for those folks that serve on those committees. You must have a minimum of 3 external members. They're not in the college. Your industrial maintenance night instructor can't be your industrial maintenance day instructor on their committee. No. So they must be external to the campus. They must have an expertise in the occupational program. A good example was brought up yesterday in Jackson. You can't have a human resources personnel that hires students out of your program on your advisory committee because they don't have an expertise in that area. They make hiring practices and they can be an addition to your 3 members, but they cannot be considered, one of your 3 with an expertise. They must represent each geographical area covered by the program at the meeting. And basically what that says is, you may be serving different counties. You may be serving some different areas and making sure that you've got a good representation on that advisory committee. When you're meeting, at least 2 of your members must physically be present. 1 can be virtual, but you must have at least 2 present at your meeting, 1 virtual. But if you have 2 present and no 1 virtual, then you don't, that's not a meeting that you can go forward with. You need all 3 present in some way. You must meet at least twice a year, annually. Most common for our TCATs, there's a spring meeting, there's a fall meeting. Fall meetings typically take place around the end of September. May be different on your campus, but this is what I most commonly see. Minutes. Keep tight minutes to document activities, recommendations, meeting attendance, and demographic information for your members. For each one of those meetings, you need these minutes. That committee, on at least an annual basis, will be reviewing the appropriateness of your instruction offered within each program. That's a form that they complete to say, I've reviewed the program. It's in compliance with what industry needs and those sorts of things. Your committee should be doing that at least once a year. This is the documentation. A list, the documentation that you maintain. A list of those committee members with their contact information, minutes, again, meeting at least twice a year, the employer verification forms, and this is what your committee should be reviewing at least annually. Any written plans or procedures. We talked about the educational programs and appropriateness of delivery modes. Strategic plan. How many of you all have seen your strategic plan on your campus? You know what the metrics are, you know what you're being held accountable for, and can talk about that with your advisory committee at least once a year. You need to know what your strategic plan is, because you should be talking about your strategic plan at least once a year with your advisory committee. The physical plant operations, that's typically a document that's maintained by your maintenance coordinator or whoever's over your facilities for those physical plant operations. Institutional health and safety plan, typically maintained in your student services office, and then the student health and safety plan, which I spoke about that, making sure students are wearing goggles in those high ceiling programs, and your shop areas stay clean and not cluttered, and those sorts of things, okay? This is what should be clearly documented in your meeting minutes. What committee is meeting? What program is it? When did the meeting take place? Who was on your committee? Who was present? What were the topics that were discussed, and what decisions or recommendations were made? At a minimum, this is what should be covered there. Some of the top reasons for non-compliance, and this is looking across all institutions that are accredited by COE. These are the top non-compliance: employer verification forms, advisory committee meetings. So not only do you have a occupational or programmatic advisory committee, you have an institutional advisory committee that's facilitated typically by the president. That institutional advisory committee are held to the same standards as your programmatic advisory committee. And then completion, placement, and licensure. You've reported something, and now we come in for a visit and we're not able to verify. We're not able to find the proof of what you've reported. Questions? Comments? Crash course is what I just gave you. We went really fast. It was a lot of information. This presentation will be uploaded to the faculty online learning community. That will be an environment where you'll be able to discuss and talk about and share anything you need to about any of the things that we've shared. But I wanted to give you at least that, so you can walk away with knowing, starting September 4th, this is what these are the things that I need to make sure that I've got checks and balances on. Okay?